the Habibie Center's International Seminar on Enhancing Indonesia's Leadership Commitments in Advancing Democratic Values and Human Rights within and beyond ASEAN. On this occasion, on this second session of the International Seminar, I would like to welcome the Colonel Frega Ferdinand Wenas, Indonesian Army officer and lecturer. Also, I would like to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Vasyl Hamianin, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine to Indonesia. And I would also like to welcome Dr. Chyung-Ly, Professor of International Relations at the National Chengchi University, Taiwan. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to inform you that we shall head to our final session of this international seminar. Our final part will highlight how Indonesia could emphasize the ASEAN centrality and partake in the universal efforts on finding viable solutions for the ongoing global tensions. Welcome to the second session of the international seminar, titled Reconsidering ASEAN Centrality, Global Geopolitical Tensions and Indonesia's 2023 as chairmanship in ASEAN. Before we proceed to our discussion, I would like to welcome our moderator for this session, Mr. Rene Pattiradjawane. Mr. Rene Pattiradjawane is a senior journalist and foreign policy expert. He holds a degree in Chinese studies from Universitas Indonesia and has studied at National Taiwan Normal University before acquiring a master's degree in international relations, economics, and trade from Flinders University. Mr. Rene Pattiradjawane is now an associate fellow at the Habibie Center, and also he's the president of the Center for Chinese Studies Indonesia. And now, please allow me to invite our moderator, Mr. Rene Pattiradjawane, to the stage. Mr. Rene Pattiradjawane, the stage is yours.
Selamat siang, Ibu-Ibu, Bapak-Bapak. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will be moderating today this afternoon sessions. Can I invite our three speakers, Ambassador Vasyl, Colonel Frega, and Bill also. Without further ado, because we started already late, actually, and I believe if you stay in Jakarta, you know what time to go home. Otherwise, you will be stranded in the on the street. So today's panel is about reconsidering ASEAN Centrality, global geopolitical tensions and Indonesia's 2023 chairmanship in ASEAN. Today's panel is like to identify actually the priorities and challenges to the Indonesia's 2023 ASEAN chairmanship in upholding values of democracy and human rights. Also, we need to analyze the ASEAN centrality concept in navigating regional and global tensions. And last but not least is try to explore alternative solutions for Indonesia in maintaining national and regional political stability. Before I start, let me introduce our panel today. On my right side, we have Dr. Chyung-Ly. She is the professor of international relations at the National Chengchi University. Dr. Lee got her Ph.D. from University of Maryland with dissertation in government and politics in 1995, entitled The Power Analysis of Asymmetrical Trade Negotiations, Cases in Taiwan-US Agricultural Trade. Her specialties include Asia-Pacific Comprehensive Security, Asia-Pacific Economic Security Multilateralisms, and conflict prevention in East Asia. The next speaker to my left is His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Vasyl Ivanovich Hamianin. He is the Ukrainian ambassador to Indonesia since October 2021. Ambassador Hamianin, born in Dnipro, and received his PhD from National Academy of Science of Ukraine, graduating in 2000 with dissertation entitled Transformation Process in the History of Modern China, 1911-1949. On my far left, I have the distinguished Colonel Infantry Frega Ferdinand Wenas, Ph.D. Colonel Wenas graduated from the Indonesian Military Academy in 1998 and got his Ph.D. from the London School of Economic and Political Science in 2020 with dissertation titled The Interplay Between Grand Strategy and Defense Diplomacy, Examining Indonesia Post-New Order Period. Colonel Wenas also teaches international relations at the Indonesian Defense University, and his military career includes being the platoon commander of the famous Airborne Infantry Battalion 328, the commander of Para Rider Infantry Battalion 330 of the Army Strategic Command, and currently Colonel Wenas is the Military District Commander 0502 in North Jakarta. I will give every panelist 15 minutes of time to present these ideas. And I would like to invite Dr. Lee to present your presentation.
Thank you very much. Please have my PowerPoint. Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. It's a great honor to celebrate your 23rd birthday here. Okay. And in addition to congratulations, I also have this honor to present some of my views on recent development in the cross-trade relations and also the security of the Taiwan Strait. Okay. Now, I prepared a PowerPoint for you to better understand my views on this. Okay. So let's, I do that myself. Yeah? So where do I point? Yeah? Oh, okay. I just decided to use graphics. So I hand drawn this graphic last night. So I hope that can help we understand that the security in the Taiwan Strait. Usually we know that there are three key actors in this matter. One is US, the other is China, and the third one, of course, is Taiwan here. And there are three circles here. I have pointer. Here. Three circles. So I identify that each side, they really have something insist. Okay. That means it's very difficult to break their insistence. Okay. For Taiwan, we insist that the way of our living should be under freedom and democracy. And for China, on this issue, they always talk about one China principle, as you are very familiar with. And for US, I think the key factor matters to their policy is their own national interests here. Okay. And then I try to find, or I try to introduce us to think about how can we stabilize these triangular relations. Okay. If we can find here, I think in that section, we have this so-called lowest common denominators here. Then probably the problem can be easier to solve. But nowadays, the stalemate situation is that there is nothing here. Okay. So we have this, both US and Taiwan will agree freedom and democracy here. And both US and China will probably use one China policy or one China principle. At least there's one China here to kind of mitigate the tensions here as a CBM. But for this side, currently, very difficult to find the common interests or common concerns here, except the peace and stability over the Taiwan Strait. But here is really the roots of the common interests we are searching for right now. And the next one, I kind of just identify the key responses to this situation from each side. I think if time permits, I will go into the details, but at least you can see for Taiwan, we are working on asymmetrical warfare capabilities to counter the threats here or the uncertainties here. And the second thing is for international defense for Taiwan. The only reason is Taiwan is the democracy. I mean, the very key reason is the democracy. So defense for Taiwan means defense for democracy here. Then for China, they have military buildup, but at the same time, they are, in their policy papers, they always say they will have peaceful unification. So that means they build up the military for peaceful unification. So the military buildup is actually not necessary for war, but for the coercion for Taiwan to kind of concede to some of the requests they have, or to create a situation here. And then last year they have several documents, but I just want to make the conclusion here. Now the Taiwan Strait, the Taiwan issue, become a historical mission to Xi Jinping, and they also constitutionalized to put the Taiwan issue in the Constitution amendment last month. Okay. For US, it's moving from strategic ambiguity, the strategy, to more Ukraine model. I think our ambassador will talk about more Ukraine situation, but from Taiwan's perspective, we always ask whether US will come to help when there is armed military conflicts happened in the Taiwan Strait. And now we kind of get some clue from what happened in Ukraine. So they will support our defense capability, no problem with that. But whether they will send the troops to Taiwan is another thing here. Okay. So now the question, a lot of discussions will focus on how Taiwan survive or Taiwan response under US-China rivalry or strategic competition. But I really wanted to take the angle differently, look at what Taiwan, if Taiwan is at a pivotal position, rather than in responding to those things, whether Taiwan can do something here. So first thing, what people think in Taiwan, I mean, what people in Taiwan think is very important here. So I kind of lay out here for you to understand. This is the survey constantly conducted by National Chengchi University, which is my university. And so they have the newest one coming soon, but if the meeting is kind of 2 weeks later, then I will have the newest one, but this is up to the June this year, last June. And you can see the green one. The green one, this is for identification. So we ask, since I was a little girl, they always ask the survey question, are you a Taiwanese or are you Chinese? Okay, so the data can serve back to more than here, okay? And now, answer Rene, you are Taiwanese, it's getting up. Answer if you are Chinese is the purple one is getting down. And if you, whether you, and some of the answers are, I'm a Taiwanese, but I'm also Chinese. But basically, this is not a national identity. This is asking your social identity and your ethnic identity most. So kind of, I wanted to introduce what people in Taiwan are thinking to you here first. The next thing is, if people ask, we are often asked, are you pro-unification or independence, right? So that's also very important question in the security of the Taiwan Strait here. And you can see the brown one. Brown one is unification as soon as possible. The red one, so the bottom one. So nobody rush into unification. So what's the brown one at the top? What's the brown one at the top? Is maintain status quo and decide later. Or this is what color? Purple. Is will maintain status quo indefinitely. Okay. So you can see these two are most popular view shared among people in Taiwan. Here is, we have two major parties, political parties. One is KMT, the other one is DPP. One is have moderate attitude towards Beijing. The other is more strong opposition to Beijing here. Okay, so you can see the questionnaire survey result. This one, what color is this? The red one. The bright red is they don't want to be identified to a certain party, okay? And then the green one is it's the DPP. That's more pro-independent, but not necessary, but more, okay? And the purple one is pro-KMT. That's one very friendly to China's regime, okay? So you can see the trends like this. And this will matters when we look at the election results, okay? So most of people, they don't want to identify themselves or bind themselves into a certain party's mandate here. So they keep the freedom. This is the election result from how many weeks ago? Huh? Last week or 2 weeks? I forgot. Yeah. So you can see, although we have the DPP administration, but for the local election, this is for local election here. 5 minutes, you're kidding me. Then here, the blue one, that's the KMT, the green one. Here is the Congress. I mean, the city Congress, how to say that? The city Congress results. Also, the blue one more, right? But but it's not certain yet. As I said that they don't want to be labeled, all the people there, they don't want to be labeled consistently into one party, right? So this is, if you look at the long-term view here, we are almost fit in the definition of Indonesia's democratization here now. Okay, so we have so many elections here, Here, the green one win the percentage of the vote. Here, the green one win the percentage of vote. That's the presidential election. So that means the local election probably the blue win sometimes, but for the presidential election, the green won a lot. Okay, so that means different level, they have different concerns. So that shows the uncertainties for the election results here. Okay, so I mean, I hope that the other side, Beijing government will not take only one election as an excuse or something to do something in different direction here. Okay, now here is the military threat. You can see that here is the statistics last year. So the highest here, this is the intrusion for the PLA fire jetter fighters. I mean the flight jetters to intrude into Taiwan Strait. I mean to Taiwan. This is Taiwan, right? So they fly like this. This is a number. Okay, it's small, but this one is the 28 one. Okay, and this one is the 56 one. Okay, so kind of contrast here. Remember this picture, then we go on the next one. Here is the Pelosi visit. After the Pelosi visit, they have the military drill, and you can see the 7 area of military drill. Some of them are in the territorial sea already. Very ironically, that we were kind of normal, in a normal living style back then, during those days, August 8 forward. Okay. Here is the routine. I think most of you probably familiar with the new normal routine here. Here's the media line. So the China aircraft fly over again and again. Okay, compared to the one here, they only stay the southwest sea here, right? Our southwest. But here, nowadays, they kind of cross it. Now, all this data you can find in our website, the Ministry of National Defense website. So they are public information. So if you are interested, you can go there and click in every day, and you can see the difference. But nowadays, I think they only show the flights over media lines. They no longer show the flight over here. Okay. So this is the latest one. I just got it this morning. Okay. Okay. So now here is what I think. So here is the current situation. Okay. So what Taiwan can do if Taiwan is in the pivot position. T is Taiwan. Okay. And here is the current situation because China is far away from U.S. China is far away from Taiwan, but Taiwan is closer to the U.S. here. Okay. For this one, it's very unstable situation, right? The best way, I think, we also envy Indonesia or the so-called strategic autonomy, what mentioned in the last session. Here, that if we have the room or space to hedge, or also adopt a hedging strategy here. But for Taiwan, whether it is possible here, if we look at here, it's very unlikely. Because you have to have equal distance to both powers, right? And here is very obvious not. But if we move to T1 or move to T2, move to T1, we have equal distance as well. This is hand drawing, so just pretend this is equal distance. And this is, then, is that possible at the current situation? Remember the first picture? There's no intersection. The intersection net is empty there. Okay, so you can see very difficult. So T1 is impossible, not right now. But T2, if we can move toward T2, then that'll be better. This is regular triangle, we have the equal size here. And then anything here will be better than here. Okay. Now, this part is what I want to emphasize, that what Indonesia as a leadership in ASEAN probably can help us to move here. Okay. Especially if we can move to here, then we have we don't need to either side too close and have more strategic autonomy here. But at the same time, we have these interdependent, complex relations in the space here. Okay, I'll move very fast. Here, so probably people will think, oh, how can we help? We have this one-channel policy all the time. Okay. Here is the UNGA resolution 2715/8. Okay, this is very famous resolution. Sometimes people use this as an excuse to kind of exclude Taiwan's participation. But if you have camera, I don't have time to go into a detail, but there's nothing. They are against the Chiang Kai-shek authoritarian regime rather than Taiwan here. Okay. So there is some chance here. Here is what I think in the future, after the Bali, Biden and Xi Jinping's meeting here. So I hope that US and China can move forward a little bit, right? And then if Taiwan can move to here, then the triangular becomes smaller, become more stable, okay? And this part, I think, is the international community can help. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I think if you mentioned the Bali meetings between President Biden and Xi Jinping, there is a red line that has been drawn up by both sides, by the American side and by the Chinese side. And I think this Taiwan's issues is much more related to between these two countries, and it doesn't consider Taiwan as being part of the issue itself. We in Indonesia was thinking of that as long as who is in charge in Taiwan can keep the 1992 consensus regarding on one China policy, probably there will be a much more room for us to maneuver. But President Tsai Ing-wen doesn't acknowledge this 1992 consensus. And this is the only Kuomintang that's going to talk about the 1992 consensus. You remember President Ma Ying-jeou and Xi Jinping meetings in Singapore, for example. That is the probabilities that I'm thinking of, Dr. Lee, instead of trying to move the line itself. Yeah? But ASEAN needs something that can be held upon of how we're going to recognize Taiwan in the framework of the One China policy. Now, let's have that for the discussion then. Next, I will invite His Excellency Dr. Vasyl. Your time is about 15 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, 女士们、先生们, glad to see you here, and it's my pleasure to be in between such authoritative scholars and analysts. I would not be presenting any PDF, any presentation, because I would like just to share some thoughts with you, which I think might be relevant to the situation, to the global situation with security, all sorts of securities and all sorts of crises. Well, 15 minutes actually is like for a start, like you know, like for a starter. And normally, I feel like talking about any of these points, I'm given as for 1 hour per point, it would be like more or less appropriate. But well, first of all, we are talking about the leadership today, so please forgive me. I would not be like going deep inside. I will be talking about rather points on the surface of the situation, right? But I think these are very much relevant, and they can lead to actually to the solution, and to perhaps to the solutions. Like first, we are talking about the leadership. Now leadership is something that will require not only glory and the achievements and some rights, right, to decide upon the region or upon the global issues, but also the responsibility. And this is a very important issue that will make the leader. If leaders want to be recognized as leaders, they must act as leaders, to take responsibility, to make decisions, and to be able to make the decisions like collectively, take a collective decisions, which will be targeted at the very concrete things, very concrete results. Otherwise, it will be like a shield reflecting the problems and not letting the problems to be resolved. Actually, this takes us to another point of isolation. If the leaders are going to become global or regional, it actually doesn't matter. The isolation is the main obstacle on this way, because the today's world is not a secret, right? It's very much global, and the interdependent on well, every country, every region are interdependent between each other in terms of diplomacy, in terms of security, in terms of logistics, in terms of communication, and etc., etc. So it's very much different from what we had like 70 years ago after the Second World War. That's why any influences, any processes that take place on the chessboard somewhere will immediately influence the other parts of the world. It's inevitable, and the longer the crisis anywhere lasts, the more severe will be the consequences for all the humankind, all the world. So the thing is, if we want to isolate and resolve the issues locally, trying to protect, like hedge yourself against the influence of the crisis, that might not work. Just a thought. So any solutions should be taken in response to the crisis, should be global and should be collective. Unfortunately, we see, well, it's pretty obvious, the United Nations failed, like Security Council now is paralyzed and not able to take any practical decisions. That's why I think this, well, it would be logical if even before any reformation of the United Nations, perhaps Security Council or anything, perhaps these responsibility, these duties could be temporarily or constantly redistributed to some international platforms, like G20, for example, or other bodies, including perhaps ASEAN, for the platforms which would be less restricted than the United Nations and its charters and all the rules, and more flexible to take real decisions in due time, which is very important too. So I intentionally didn't raise the issue of Russian aggression against Ukraine, because it's pretty obvious that it triggered the series of crises. I think I mentioned them, like, you know, it's like a series of crises: financials and logistical, food crisis, energy crisis, ecology crisis, etc. But the main crisis, I think, is the crisis of trust and global diplomacy, which actually became the main I don't know, obstacle maybe on the way of consensus between the world leaders. What is, well, last but one, about the mediation. Just to put it straight and clear, right? As I mentioned, like in the very beginning of the war, I didn't believe in mediation in the process of like ending up Russian aggression by means of diplomacy. I didn't believe in that, not because we didn't want it. Obviously, we were under attack and are under attack, and we are suffering most of all. But because I know the opposite side very well. So that's why I will link it, the mediation, again to the notions of leadership and to isolation. I don't think we, like Ukrainian nation and any leaders, global leaders, would feel it appropriate just to take the decision of freezing the conflict and just leave it for mediation and diplomacy, like for 20 or 30 or, I don't know, 50 years, because this will not resolve the problem. This will only postpone the problem, and this will exacerbate the real situation. And what is more important, it will not put the end to the roots of the problem. It will not cut the roots, and not cutting the roots now will lead to the risk of repeating it again and again by this state or the others. As you know, the terrorist methods and that sort of, like threats, blackmailing, etc., are very viral. So if you deal with terrorists as with equals, they will do it again and again, tomorrow, in any part of the world. That's why it's not a good. It was not originally a good idea to raise the issue of mediation in terms of, I repeat, freezing the conflict. But mediation could be possible in terms of dealing with the consequences of this aggression worldwide. This would be a good one, and it is inevitable, and it will come. Well, we'll see it sooner or later. Better sooner than later. The solutions. So from these points, we'll come to the solutions. What are the solutions? What are the prospects? I will not be like standing up and telling that yes, Russian empire will be defeated, but there must be a clear plan, and there must be an algorithm how to end up this story once and for good. Or I'll just make 4 points for myself. To deal with the global negative phenomenon, let's call them this. There could be like 4 stages. First is like recognition of the problem, not trying to avoid or to go all around, pretending there is no problem. Second is the acknowledgement of the roots of the problem. That's why I really don't like the formula war in Ukraine, because it will lead us only to the Ukraine. Something is wrong with Ukraine. I would always say that it is the Russian aggression against Ukraine, or invasion, whatever you prefer. So we should name it and acknowledge the roots. Third, we should identify the efficient instruments for dealing with it, for cutting the roots. And fourth, we would take decision, which is the trickiest part, because for this or that reasons, I think my colleagues from Taiwan will and from Indonesia might agree with that. This is very tricky when it comes to the real actions. You might even be able to identify the instruments, and then you will not be able to find consensus to do something tangible and practical to end up all this. But here we go to the last part of my little speech. It's I would not cite all of this, but I think that for the instruments and actions, All of those were presented by my president during his speech on G20 summit. And I just named them one by one. It's like simple without comments. You will understand that. First one is these points, like peace formula of President Zelensky, would include radiation and nuclear safety. We would not allow, if we allow anyone to blackmail the world with the nuclear weapons, that will be the the day of what? I say the end of the world, right? The world will be doomed because anyone having anything like that would be doing this. Second, food security. That's pretty obvious. Again, another instrument of blackmailing the world with blocking the delivery corridors, with destroying actually the facilities and destroying the crops, etc. Energy security. This is a painful, like food security also. It's very painful. While the nuclear safety is like we can imagine this, but food and energy security is very, very painful for any nation, for any society, and it will not only cause rises of prices, it will also cause even social and political unrests in many countries, which is not acceptable for the global world of 21st century. Next one, release of prisoners and deported persons, forcefully deported persons, obviously. No comments on that. Implementation of the UN Charter and restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity. Actually, I would doubt if, I wonder if any country will not agree with that. And this is like pretty clear that if we don't respect the conventional rules and laws that we all accepted once and for good, this will be a chaos, and manipulations will turn into the new crisis and new conflicts. Withdrawal of Russian troops and cessation of hostilities, clear. Restoration of justice, this bit is very important. This bit is tricky and it will require the consensus of the world. It will require the very close attention and actions by the leaders of the regions and of the world to bring the war criminals to justice. It's not just a simple word or simple procedures, but justice should prevail. We are not, because we're not talking about the Russia against Ukraine. We're talking, in fact, of dictatorship, imperialism, authoritarian rule, and sort of war crimes against justice, humanity, and democracy. So every leader of the world, every leader of the region must decide, what side are we on? It's nothing to do with names. It's, we are dealing with notions, and this is important to understand. Are we on the side of humanity, rule of law, and justice, or we are on the side of dictatorship and all sort of criminals or of crimes? Countering ecocide. Ecocide is another problem which I will not be deeply discussing, but we are talking about the radiation, we're talking about the chemical weapons, we're talking about the natural catastrophes and calamities we're facing in many regions of Ukraine now, especially on the east. Prevention of escalation and confirmation of the end of the war, which will be hopefully the final document. Call it whatever you want. Unconditional capitulation of the aggressor or something like that. But these scenarios, I could anticipate, and I repeat, these scenarios will depend on the decision of the world leaders. If the scenarios I anticipate will be fulfilled, then we'll have the world without just -1 aggressive imperialist nuclear state. So basically, we're talking about denazification and denuclearization of the aggressive Russian state. And this will be for the greater good of the world. So I do hope that leaders of the world will think globally, will think for the sake of mankind, for the sake of a greater good. Very final 1 second. Just remind everyone that we've already established in Ukraine the platform, international platform, calling the Crimea Platform, dedicated to the restoration of territorial integrity of Ukraine and to the protection of human rights and the rights of ethnic minorities and the rights of religious minorities in Ukraine, which is the Crimean Tatars community, Ukrainian Muslim community. So this is something that also we would call upon all the leaders of the world to take into account, consider participating in it. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Hamianin. We could agree on the issues regarding to leaderships and mediations. But on isolation, I think isolation is another part of an issue that we need to carefully scrutinize, because isolating somebody else as any countries is also against the law itself, right? And we need to keep that in mind and think. And Indonesia positions, and I think most of the ASEAN position is also very clear. We are against any sort or form of aggression and land grabbing. That is the main principles of ASEAN that has been fortified in the past 70 years to keep stability and peace in these particular regions. Although we do have some quarrels between neighbors and so on, but then luckily for us that the problem is only among us. It's not against a neighbor that is so huge that it's not easily to solve the problem is. And I think Indonesia is already reflecting itself being a leader, because President Jokowi is the only leader that met with President Zelensky and President Putin at the same time. There is no other leaders who's doing that. Whether there is a talk about peace solution and so on, that's a different matter. Because the peace itself, it will depend on what the leaders that been in conflict wants to do. And this will be a very difficult issue. Anyway, we could discuss this in our question and answer. So I'd like to ask Commander Wenas. 15 minutes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
You want to run now?
I beg your pardon. I have to run to the airport because my flight to Bali for Democracy Forum is on my way, and it's bad traffic. I'm sorry about that,
No
but
problem.
I really hope we'll communicate later.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody, and see you sometimes. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, before I present, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Habibie Center for this invitation and also for this great opportunity. Could I get my slide on, please? So the topic for my presentation this afternoon will be focusing on ASEAN centrality, defense diplomacy, and in the Indo-Pacific dynamics. So throughout my presentation, I will touch upon three key issues, which is trying to explore the nexus between ASEAN centrality and defense diplomacy, and also how to actually build up, the inclusive Indo-Pacific with especially what we have in defense diplomacy, which is called confidence building measures. And the third point is actually how Indonesia could play its role in navigating as a chairman of ASEAN next year. So as we know that ASEAN, I think for over decades since its establishment, the organization itself has attempted to play and also craft its centrality based on the charter itself, try to drive as the primary driving force in the region, try to engage with not only the players in the region but also extra-regional partners. And perhaps this is just a brief explanation on defense diplomacy. I don't know whether, any of you have already familiar with the issues. So we know that after during the post-Cold War era, there has been an introduction of defense diplomacy where the defense and military instrument has been used as part of the foreign policy objective and also to secure national interests abroad. And also in this case, it has become one of the key essential of public diplomacy elements, and in a way it could serve as a foreign policy force multiplier. And here are the list of key defense diplomacy activities, ranging from the contacts between senior military and civilian defense officials. So when we are talking about defense diplomacy, it means that we're engaging not only with the military officials, but also civilian personnel who work within the Ministry of Defense or Department of Defense, and indeed the military themselves. Also defense attaché for many years, this has been, as a form of compliance with the Vienna Convention, where most countries will have their defense attaché or military attachés. Also DCA or defense cooperation agreements, and a number of other activities until the final one, which is quite common, which is used by many countries to conduct military exercises. So when we talk how we actually trace the nexus between ASEAN centrality and defense diplomacy, as I mentioned previously, that ASEAN centrality has been crafted out in the ASEAN Charter. So ASEAN tried to play its pivotal role in the region, try to be the primary driving force. And of course, since 2006 and also 2010, ASEAN has initiated the ADMM, ASEAN Defense Minister Meeting, and also with the Plus as well, where the forum has invited the 8 strategic dialogue partners, including US, China, and Russia. But with the recent years, there's been a deepening strategic competition, the rivalry between major powers, on also the pandemic itself, has complicated the situation in the region and also has challenged the importance of ASEAN centrality, and it makes difficult not only for the interaction within ASEAN framework itself, but also the defense diplomacy. And also some of the scholars, they identified actually for ASEAN, when we are talking about ASEAN centrality, grouping outside ASEAN could be quote unquote perceived as a threat because it challenges ASEAN centrality. And on this slide, we could see there are numerous instruments that ASEAN has used, as I mentioned, ADMM and ADMM Plus. Even though prior to the establishment of ADMM in 2006, there was actually an informal forum. They know ASEAN Chief Defense Forces informal meeting. It was originally established in 2001 in post the WTC. So all the Chief Defense Forces in ASEAN, they met together and they decided to form this kind of forum to facilitate interaction between Chief of Defense Forces. And 5 years later, the Defense Minister Forum was established, and also 2010, as I mentioned, that 8 dialogue partners were also invited. So most of the ASEAN countries would use these two, actually, which is the contact between senior officials, which is through the Ministry of Defense, which I call in this presentation as strategic dialogues. And the other one is actually joint exercises. But the scale and the scope of how each ASEAN countries also, collectively use joint exercises varies between period of time and also between, key administration within their respective country. And under ADMM and ADMM Plus, we also have the ASEAN Defense Senior Official Meeting, which is, in the case of Ministry of Defense, we have the Secretary General of Ministry of Defense. Usually, they will meet with their counterparts from ASEAN, the 10 member countries, and also the other 8 partner countries. And over time, there has been also added up activity, which we know as the expert working group, where we try to invite not only government officials, but also think tanks, academics, so we can exchange. That's why they also set the path, paved the way for what we know as the track 2 defense diplomacy, or perhaps we combine as one and a half, because track 1 is mostly about government officials. And it is an honor, also a pleasure, this kind, of a forum sets also a way, where there's a combination between government officials. We see the ambassador and also, academics and think tank here. So this is the way, like, ASEAN has been used to facilitate its defense diplomacy. And regarding the establishment of ADMM and ADMM Plus, both of these forum or strategic dialogues have been intended to set as the key pillars of regional security architecture, and also, build trust and also foster practical cooperation. And these are some of the key events which I pick up for my slide. In 2022, you can see that there is a number of events, including the ADMM itself, ADMM Plus, and some additional one, like the expert working group, the retreat. And there are various modes that have been chosen to conduct these activities, because some have been organized online through video conferences, but some have been organized hybrid, which is we organize the ADMM Plus expert working group on counterterrorism in Russia, and on maritime security in the US, and some others in Cambodia, because the chair for this year for ASEAN is Cambodia, some others military medicine in Brunei, and also the humanitarian assistance disaster relief in Indonesia this year, because we are going to chair ASEAN next year. And after 2 years, the disruption because of the pandemic, eventually this year, ASEAN actually could organize a face-to-face ADMM and ADMM Plus. And recently, they could conclude the joint declarations with the Team Defense Cooperation to strengthen solidarity for a harmonized security. So there are some of the key points that I pick up, even though there are some others point there, which is collective effort and practical operations in dealing with the traditional, non-traditional threats, which include pandemic, terrorist, natural disasters, and so on. And indeed, in line with the, with the commitment of ASEAN, promotion of peace, security, stability, and prosperity in the region is very fundamental. Also, CBM, confidence-building measures, in order to reduce tension, risk of incident or accidents, misunderstanding, miscalculations, and also the initiative to expand the ASEAN direct communication infrastructure, where there is a direct channel, secure hotline between each member countries, each leaders, so they can facilitate the discussion or communication. And in Indo-Pacific, we know that there are also challenges despite the proposal that we have, that we try to put inclusivity as the principle. You know, ASEAN should be the driving force, because we know that there are, you know, different perspective on how the region actually sees Indo-Pacific. For ASEAN itself, the interest to lead the shaping of its economic and security architecture is very critical. Also, with the emerging challenges in the Asia-Pacific and in the Indian Oceans. And actually, the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific has been successful. Has been successful due to Indonesian initiative and determination, thanks to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they work together with their ASEAN partners from other countries in the region to underline the strategic necessity to articulate ASEAN's own visions of future regional order and architecture. However, as I mentioned, that there are challenges, because in practical, there have been ambivalence and pragmatism, promoting different elements with different dialogue partners. So some of the analysts and observers criticize this practice, and some scholars also touch upon on the focus of AOIP, which is too more on economic instead of defense and security. And there's also a recommendation of trying to avoid being another exercise in norm setting, which is perhaps like a decade ago or 2 decades ago, many scholars have perhaps doubted that ASEAN could be practical and be useful in setting the norm. That's why we try to avoid this kind of things occur again. And of course, one of the challenges is try to balance with its own interests, which is the centrality and unity and strategic autonomy in the Southeast Asia region. This is the way how ASEAN actually try to engage with Indo-Pacific region through the confidence building measures, as I mentioned, strategic dialogues. So as AOIP has 4 actual key pillars, which is maritime cooperations, connectivity, sustainable development, and economic cooperations. So in terms of ADMM and ADMM Plus, we try to engage the major powers, especially the US and China, because we need a proportional engagement with these 2 major powers, as they are the key players in the region, especially in the Indo-Pacific. And of course, strategic dialogue has been used for strategic engagement, conflict building measures, because sometimes, not only between institutions, but sometimes the people-to-people connection between minister to minister, secretary general to secretary general, or even like military chief to military chief. Because of this connection that they foster throughout the interaction, it could facilitate a personal, access when there is a, incident or the escalation of situation. They just can, pick the phone and call their peers in other countries and try to perhaps asking for a recommendation or suggestion that can help to contribute, find a peaceful solution to the issues. And also multilateral approaches, because when we are talking about ASEAN centrality, it's been organized as a collective approach. But in the sideline of this multilateral meeting, ADMM and ADMM Plus, we also allow partner countries or member countries to also organize bilateral meeting. So among those participants, they also usually hold bilateral meetings to supplement the multilateral ones. However, in Indo-Pacific, we also have to bear in mind that there are numerous also initiatives out of ASEAN, like the Quad and Quad Plus. Also, the AUKUS recently has been established between the UK, US, and Australia, and also China and Russia. And a couple of years ago, China has conducted the largest military exercise with Russia in terms of scale, and also with the deployment of forces as I think as a counterbalance to what the Quad or Quad Plus has conducted, inviting not only the Quad, which is the Japan, India, Australia, but also invited the UK, I think Germany, France as well, as part of the maritime exercise. These are the current dynamics. I think we are all aware of the situation. regional dynamic development, return of great power game in Southeast Asia, and of course, as we have listened to the previous presentation by Ambassador Vasyl on the current situation on Ukraine and where the Russo-Ukraine war also taking place and impacting not only the European region but also globally. So we also are facing the impact of that crisis. And Indonesia has been trying to pave the way and try to contribute significantly to what we call the recent one was the proposal in ADMM last year. These are the key points where Indonesia crafted and submit. And of course, community building, the final point is very critical. We try to optimize defense cooperation with dialogue partners while maintaining centrality and unity. And indeed, for next year, the 2023, we will be the chairman of ASEAN. Of course, we want perhaps to take the lesson learned when we organize the G20 this year and try to perhaps repeat the success of organizing these international events. And I would perhaps suggest or perhaps recommend two approaches that we can use actually for Indonesia in navigating this global tension and regional dynamics, which is through the strategic dialogues through the Ministry of Defense. We have these kind of forums where we can, maintain our good relations with the major powers, because we invited Russia, US, China as part of the dialogue partners in the ADMM Plus. Direct communication, of course, highlighting the strategic trust built up in mutual confidence. Combination of bilateral and multilateral approaches is also very critical. And in addition to these strategic dialogues, I would perhaps recommend the joint exercises. As we know that ASEAN and China and US, they have organized the maritime exercise where ASEAN and China and ASEAN and US, they have organized a large-scale exercise. And I think in terms under the umbrella of ADMM Plus, we also organized a number of counterterrorism joint exercise and also cybersecurity, other things like that. And I think we want to repeat this kind of mechanism. Perhaps we will combine the traditional issues and non-traditional issues, especially we have learned a lot from the pandemic and also the current situation that we are facing. We don't know yet how Indonesia or how ASEAN actually will work, and also the situation is very unpredictable. Whether the Russo-Ukraine war will be ended by early of next year, we don't know. But we are optimistic that as a chair of ASEAN, Indonesia will take the initiative to take a constructive and peaceful solution to the region and perhaps contribute to the global peace. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Colonel Frega. It is very interesting, and when you look at how the military cooperations in these particular regions among ASEANs and their dialogue partners actually embrace understandings between nations. And I think the main particular issues, Dr. Lee, is we do have quite a lot of dialogues, quite a lot of exercise. But Taiwan has never been a part of that. When I was in Taiwan in 2012, 2013, when I'm talking with the scholars there and the government officials there, the ideas that I like to propose is actually, because Indonesia is in the middle of this strategic geolocations, and we've been in the confluence of the two oceans, the Indian Oceans and the Pacific Ocean. Probably we should do more dialogues regarding to maritime issues. For example, is there any possibilities for us to expand the exercises of Coast Guard instead of a military? Because military exercises, military cooperation, military dialogue, and so on, tend to instigate curiosities from other power But if you talk about Coast Guard, because if we look at the Coast Guard as a whole, Coast Guard is not only, nowadays Coast Guard is expanding their operation areas and their operation abilities, yeah? Not regarding only the coast, but also we're talking about the next futures of blue oceans, for example. So we can have this particular Coast Guard exercise joint understandings between nations, including Taiwan, but that will be very difficult issues, but that will be the very good examples actually, where we are trying to avoid political issues and that particular that related to sovereignties, to integrations, to independence and so on and so forth, trying to cover much more issues on the maritime itself, the blue oceans. We have plastic debris, we have IUU fishing, we have quite a lot that we can have an understanding to cooperate with each other. Nevertheless, so I will open the discussion. We'll already be running late, it's almost 5 o'clock. And I think the discussion will be around 20, 25 minutes. Okay, so my colleague already gave me a note that we need to finish by 5 p.m. So it's only about 15 minutes from now on, and I will only open the floor for two questions. And let's see if only questions, I mean not comments, that need to be addressed by Dr. Lee and Colonel Frega. Please. Pak. Please. Satu lagi? One more? Any questions? Okay. So we have 2 questions. Please identify yourself. And
yeah, I have identified myself in the first session, Ibrahim. You are Salat, you call Ibrahim. What I would like to raise here in 2003 is the geoeconomics, not only geopolitics. Because geoeconomics is the use of the economic instrument for the attainment of the geopolitical ends. But now, after the sanction, Western sanction to the Russian oil economy, but now Western countries introduce also the price cap, $60 for 1 barrel. And then in responding to this, Russia now stops sending the oil through the pipelines to Europe. But Europe could not find the alternatives. So it will be a repercussion globally, including to Indonesia in 2003. Now, Europe can fulfill the thing up to the end of 2000, but according to World Trade Organization, not in 2023. Then it will be the timing for Indonesian chairmanship. So Indonesia should see, in ASEAN also, about the geoeconomics, not only geopolitical. This is one. Then on Taiwan, should look the meeting of the President Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden, the sidelines of the G20 in Bali. Conflicts be prevented, but competition will be waging between America and China. So I think we observe this. China will not conducting the reunification, I think, during until 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Yes, next one.
Thank you very much, Mas Rene, and all speakers. I would like, my name is Sofwan from Habibie Center and the University of Indonesia. I would like to ask about the possibility of Chinese aggressive action in Taiwan. A lot of discussions commenting on the latest speech by Xi Jinping on rejuvenation, and many experts interpret the idea of Chinese, national rejuvenation refers to the reintegration or reunification of Taiwan into China. As part of his aim during his leadership. How do you see this, and how possible is an aggression from China? It seems that there are also indications that Western powers, including the United States, by looking at the success, quote unquote, in Ukraine to contain and give some blow to Russia, see Taiwan might be a good another Ukraine if Ukraine successfully bring Russia down in the hierarchy of major powers. Maybe Taiwan could be also useful in that sense. There are some speculations among I think observers on that. Could please the speakers and the moderator also give some comment on that. Thank you very much.
No, I'm only moderating.
I know you are itchy to give some comments.
I'm trying to moderating on this thing, but okay, let's focus this on this thing. Pa Ibrahim, you're talking about the cap prices. The cap prices is like isolation strategy that has been imposed against Russia, whatever the reason is. But do you think that the cap prices is fair enough, since the oil was owned by sovereign countries, and you're telling that sovereign countries cannot sell their oil because of the cap prices? So an unjust law is not a law. That's ridiculous. On on Taiwan, I think I just added very quick. Taiwan is not Ukraine. That will need to be understood. The strategic culture in Europe is different than the strategic culture in Asia. Irredentism cannot be applied in Taiwan. Irredentism belong to the Europeans. Our strategic culture here is about hang on, I forgot the terminology, but the main idea is the strategic culture in Asia is about contribution, about what kingdom is giving what to a particular country. It's about upeti. How do you say upeti? Tributary system. It's different things. We solve our issues through this particular tributary. Whether tributary in terms of products, in terms of what, or a tributary in terms of intermarriages. We don't see that particular things in Europe. So that is one thing. Number two, can you imagine if there is an attack from mainland China to Taiwan? It's not easy. It will be very difficult because of the geographical location, number one. Number two, can you imagine how many surnames, Lees, that are going to be wiped out? Li, Wong, Huang, Jiang, Xi will be wiped out because we are dealing with the countries that in a generation with only one child. And for the Chinese, that will be a problem. You will instigate a domestic protest. Once a whole army of, let's say, Lees is vaporizing due to the war. Dr. Lee.
Thank you very much for giving me a chance to respond. Actually, you know, what I presented, actually I wanted to show a hope, okay, for Taiwan to move around. Now it's stuck there, as my triangle shows. Okay, so and I appreciate all your concerns here. And I also, the purpose for my presentation here, I think the main purpose is for the audience to know Taiwan more, especially for the voice from people in Taiwan. I provide the evidence. They are not my opinions. They are the evidence conducted a long time in the research community there. So I hope all the audience here can benefit from those statistics and the data I show. The main key points here, I think I totally agree with Park Rene about the G20's conclusion between Xi and Biden here. I think Xi Jinping emphasized that the Taiwan issue is the core of core interests, right? So, but I also see the hope there. Why? Because I think if we work under the intensive tensions between US and China, that will be more difficult for us. So probably they too should have more friendly relations. They move toward each other better. And so in the conclusion of G20, they agree that they have to be more responsible powers, superpowers. That's the first one. The other thing, they agree that they will keep the crisis communications open. Okay, so these two are good things. That's why I propose that, and next year probably we can see a better relations between China and the US. Okay, and then I think I totally understand Indonesia's position, and I think we appreciate Indonesia as being a friend, and your suggestion about the dialogue between Coast Guards here. But I also wanted to emphasize that the voice of people in Taiwan is important, and we are a democracy here. So, and we will have the presidential election in 2024. Okay. So what I presented is mainly about this 2023, the project. If the current situation is like this, what we can expect in 2023. We do really need help from international community. So we work together to avoid the Chinese invasion to Taiwan here. Regarding to the real military confrontation, whether that's very likely or very possible in the very near future here, okay, one of the arguments I heard, okay, China, they will continue building up their military. That's for they wanted to be a power, so the modernization of military is very important, the build up of military. But in many important talks and documents, they still say that they hope they have this peaceful unification. Okay. Okay, so it's peaceful, and then you think, why you build up all the military? Therefore, their strategic purpose here. So I think there is something in between called military coercion. They have this military continuing build up here, but at the same time, they have this use that as a means to create a situation for Taiwan to think about twice. Okay, for their independence, for our independence. And especially after the military trio, my personal experience, some of the academic cooperations between me and Canada, they stop, interrupt, because the students there, they consider the safety of their traveling to Taiwan. Okay, so it's something like this. They use the military there, but not really have this invasion. But those military presentations there will have their work, their purpose. Okay, that's my short answer.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Commander Frega?
Well, thank you for the
2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Two critical questions. Thank you so much. The first point regarding geoeconomics, I think this is also very critical, especially as ASEAN has put economic as the fundamental principle of it. And of course, this should be taken into play when we also analyze or develop our initiative. And regarding the second question by Masofwan, I really like Taiwan will be another Ukraine, but perhaps I agree with Bang Rene that it's totally different. And in terms of the likely so-called invasion, we will rely on the political condition in the US itself in 2024, as mentioned by Dr. Lee. And I think it is unpredictable, the situation, as long as it crossed the boundary. What happened actually in Ukraine, from the Russian perspective, perhaps Putin considered that it crossed the boundary of its vital interest. That's why perhaps it, deployed the forces there and also, aggravated the situation and extended the war there for some purpose. And I think if the situation, similar situation also occurs in China, where Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party perceive that crosses the boundary of their vital national interest, it is likely for the Chinese to also conduct the same scenario, because as we know that currently, based on the literature that I have read, that Chinese has built up the maritime forces, and in terms of let's say submarine, they have exceeded US and some other major powers. So they're trying to build up, and once they reach the equilibrium or they exceeded the US defense postures, and they see it's very obvious that you cross our boundary, it will likely to occur. But again, it depends on the domestic politics in China and also in the US. I think that's my take on the two critical questions. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Frega. And I think time is also already being limited. Probably we need to ask Habibie Center to have another forum, working with Teto. You have Greg here. Probably we need to expand to a 1.5 track, as been Colonel Frega has been suggesting on us. 1.5 track is okay. The 2 tracks we only among academicians and so on, but 1.5 tracks will have a very different impact actually. Anyway, can we have a big applause for our panelists here? And I think this will end today's panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers, Colonel Frega Wenas, to Dr. Lee Chyung-Ly, and of course His Excellency Ambassador Vasyl Hamianin, and to our moderator, Mr. Rene Pattiradjawane, for the excellent discussion on Reconsidering ASEAN Centrality, Global Geopolitical Tension, and Indonesia's 2023 Chairmanship in ASEAN. We definitely hope that our overall discussions today will be fruitful for everyone who watch, either from this location, Le Méridien Hotel, or through the Habibie Center's YouTube channel. And the Habibie Center would also like to convey our thanks to everyone's participation in today's international seminar. And with that, I would like to conclude the Habibie Center's international seminar on enhancing Indonesia's leadership commitments in advancing democratic values and human rights within and beyond ASEAN. I would also like to inform that as the room will be prepared for the next agenda tonight, I would also kindly advise everyone here to exit from the room as soon as this program ends. Thank you so much, and see you again later today. Thank you.